إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. We seek the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this gathering, and we seek to increase in our knowledge and knowledge that benefits us. Last week we did Takbirat al-Ihram, and we also did standing. The summary of it is that Takbirat al-Ihram is a rukn, and if it's not done correctly, then the prayer will not be valid. And that in general, a person should hear himself saying Allahu Akbar. And the standing for Takbirat al-Ihram is also a rukn. And we discussed the detail around a person who joins the Imam late, and if he does Takbirat al-Ihram while going towards ruku', or that his intention is not for Takbirat al-Ihram, what will be the end result of those things. We also did as a side topic the raising of the hands being a sunnah and how that should be done, and also where the hands should be placed after the raising of the hands. And we also did the prayer of the sick person. So what we are trying to do with this methodology is we're trying to complete the arkan, and then whenever there is anything that is related as a topic, then we try and cover that as well. So the next pillar after Takbirat al-Ihram is the recitation of the Fatiha. So after we do Takbirat al-Ihram, there are things that are between that and the Fatiha, so we will cover that before we go into the Fatiha. First of all, that when the person is standing, it is mustahab or sunnah for him to be looking at the place that he will be doing sujood. Okay. And that has two benefits. One is that is less distracting, and number two, that prevents him from looking around. The question then is, so you're standing and you're looking at the place of sujood. What happens when you do ruku'ah? Do you look at the place of sujood, or do you look at some other place? Between the 2 feet has been mentioned. Some have mentioned, for example, Imam Shafri and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal says that the person would look at his place of sujood for the entire time, except when he comes for the tashahhud, where he will look at his finger that he takes the shahada for. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal also has a second opinion that he says that he will look at his feet or between his feet when he does ruku'ah. Imam Abu Hanifa has further detail. His detail is that when he is standing, he will look at the place of sujood. When he does ruku'ah, he will look at his feet or between his feet. And when he does the sitting down, he will look at his lap. Right? So instead of the place of sujood, he will look at his lap. And in a sense, because you put your hand on your lap for the tashahhud, he is actually looking at the area where his hands are. And when he does taslim, he will look at his shoulder. So he's not looking to the right, but he is actually looking at the shoulder. So this covers all the places that the person is looking at. Is he allowed to look around, and will that invalidate the prayer? The answer is that does not invalidate the prayer. So we discussed on Monday Salat al-Khawf, where the enemy is in front of you. Then you actually want to be visually looking at the enemy when you are praying, as if they are in front of you. So you're not looking down, but you are looking in front. There's ikhtilaf on looking at the Kaaba when you are in the masjid, and I'm not going to discuss that today. Then the next question is, I'm standing now for prayer, I'm looking at the place of sujood, and I have got my hands in the place that we discussed last week. how do I place my feet, which is a related matter as well. Essentially, all the fuqaha say that the feet should not be joined completely together. One foot should not be in front of another foot. You should not be leaning on one foot. I had a funny situation. I used to pray in another masjid, and there was a brother who used to come and pray there, and every single day he would pray like this, leaning to one side. And I used to look at him and think, what's wrong with this person? He walks normally, when he talks to you, he stands normally, but when he's praying, he's always leaning to the same side. Then one year, his father came on a parent's visa and stayed for 3 months, and he also prayed to that. So I said, okay, I have figured it out now, where the problem has arisen from. Otherwise, the qiyam comes from qiyam, which means to be upright, to stand upright. Okay? And so therefore, a person who is able to, who doesn't have any health problems, he should be standing upright. Someone who has a health problem, he's hunchback, or he's bent forward because of a back problem, and that will be allowed for him, as we discussed in the prayer of the sick person. Getting back to the feet should not be completely joined together. Imam Abu Hanifa, to do mubalagha on that the feet should not be far apart, he says the distance between the 2 feet should be the distance of 4 fingers. So you have 1 foot here, 1 foot here. That's how close they are. That's Hanafi madhab. Imam Shafri and Imam Malik simply say that the feet are separated, that they cannot be joined. They do not say that the feet have to be shoulder width, or they have to be far apart or close together. They simply say that they should not be completely joined together. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal says that when the person stands in the jama'ah, his feet should be so that it is touching the person next to him and on that side as well. However, he says that this is not a shart for every rak'ah. Okay? And the reason that the person does this is so that he makes sure there is no gap in the row, and that the row is lined up straight because you have joined the feet. And hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, connect your feet, your knees, and your shoulders. And so the other fuqaha took this hadith to mean that it's not the actual connection, but what is meant that if everyone's shoulder and their knees and their feet are connected in a row, then the row will be completely straight. And if you think about it, can you actually physically touch the knee of the person next to you? It's not possible. Unless you have an odd anatomy, you can't actually touch it. So the meaning of the hadith is not to physically touch, but to make the row completely straight. And even the Hanbalis, when they go into sujood, they are not touching each other's feet. Right? So it is not a requirement that the feet are touching the other person for the entire prayer. The essence of it is to make sure there is no gaps and that the row is straight. That is what is actually required. Clearly, through exceptional times like a pandemic, we had the situation where people were praying separated, and the fuqaha allowed it for that purpose. But when their cause is gone, then the allowance will be gone as well. There are 3 things between the Takbirat al-Ihram and the Fatiha. The first is the Thana, the second is the Ta'awudh, and the third is the Basmala. The Thana is the opening dua. It is also called dua al-Istiftah, the opening dua. Imam Malik says that the Istiftah will not be done, and it is makruh. He also says that the Ta'awudh and the Basmala will not be done. So according to him, the person will do niyyah, he will do takbirat al-ihram, and he will go straight to the Fatiha starting from Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Okay? This is Imam Malik. And Imam Malik says that if anyone comes with any of these 3 things, it is makruh. Okay? Because he says there should be nothing between the qira'ah and the takbirat al-ihram.
No Thana, no Basmala.
None of the 3 things. No. Ta'awudh, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So the Thana is the Istiftah, and we'll describe what it is. The ta'awudh is A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim, and the basmala is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So that's the position of Imam Malik. Now he has this position because he says that there should be nothing between the qira'ah and the opening statement. And in addition, he says that neither the ta'awudh nor the basmala are part of the Quran, and therefore it would be an additional part of the prayer, and you should not do anything additional. Okay? At the other extreme end is Imam Shafri. Imam Shafri and everyone apart from Imam Malik says that thana is a sunnah. Let's do the thana first, and then we'll come to the Shafi'i position. So you do an opening istiftah, and there are multiple du'as that are narrated by the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Abu Hanifa, his position is that the person should say, Subhanaka Allahumma tabarak asmuka wa ta'ala jadduka wa la ilaha ghayruk. For him, this is the only opening statement that should be done. Okay? The Shafi'i say, وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَرَدَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. You can also say, إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. My favorite Qari is Sheikh Talib Hamid, who is the Imam of Medina. He's my number one Qari. I really enjoy listening to him. And when you watch him praying, he'll say Allahu Akbar, and you can put the second on. An entire 1 minute will go by, and he's doing his thana and his dua. However, the position of the Shafis and the Hanafis is that this should not be prolonged. The Hanbalis give you the option of doing either dua, both of them. And you can see, like I've said this many times before, the Hanbalis usually have ikhtiyar. They don't say that one is definitively should be done. You can choose this and you can choose this, because that is his madhab. Everyone says the thana is done quietly. In a few minutes, I will come to the definition of quietly. The next question is, if I come late to the prayer, do I do thana or not? Okay? And the answer is that you do not do thana. All right. And we will come to the Shafi'i position on if a person does do thana, what does he have to do? Because of that, Imam Shafi'i has some specific conditions. If I don't discuss it today, then remind me to do it later on. If the latecomer has missed his raka'at and he gets up in this situation, he is allowed to come with his thana, because for him he is now beginning his own individual prayer. He can do the thana at this stage. But because he has missed it, he does not need to bring it again. The Hanafis say that the person needs to do the thana before the Imam starts his recitation. If the Imam starts the recitation, then you do not bring the thana after this point. Okay. So you came and he is in the middle of Fatiha, you don't do the thana. All right. Any questions about the thana? You all happy?
What's the Shafi'i position on thana?
The Shafi'i position on thana is that he does it when he enters the prayer, if the Imam is reciting the Quran. Okay? And so the position is that he needs to have enough time to do the Fatiha, but we'll come to the technicalities of that. Okay? I'll do it when I finish the Fatiha, then I will do that part of it. The ta'awudh is a sunnah. To say A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim is a sunnah for the three Imams apart from Imam Malik. Imam Abu Hanifa says that it will only be done in the first rak'ah. So when you say Allahu Akbar, then you will say A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim. Imam Shafri says that you will do it in every rak'ah before the Fatiha, not before the surah, only before the Fatiha. So every time he gets up, second, third, fourth rak'ah, he will say A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajim. And these things are sunnah, they're not a wajib nor a rukun. Because Imam Abu Hanifa has the ruling that the ma'moom, the one praying behind an imam, is called a ma'moom, right? Because Imam Abu Hanifa has the position that the ma'moom never recites behind an imam, he doesn't do ta'awudh, he He doesn't do the basmala, he doesn't do Fatiha, he doesn't do surah behind the imam. If he does any of these four things, it will be considered makruh. It is makruh tahrimi, right? The Hanafis have two kinds of makruh, if you remember from previous classes. They have makruh tahrimi, makruh tanzihi. So it is sinful to come with the recitation behind the imam. And because you only do the ta'awudh and the basmala because you're going to recite Fatiha, when you are praying behind an imam, you don't come up with these things. Then we'll go on to the basmala. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Imam Shafri has the opposite opinion to Imam Malik in that he says that the basmala is part of the Quran and part of every surah. It will be read as part of the Fatiha and it will be read as part of a surah. Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal have the middle ground between these two extremes. They say that it is not part of the Quran, not part of the Fatiha, but it is a sunnah to read it. It is a fasl between the surahs. This ikhtilaf goes back to the Sahaba. Okay? And you will see that in every mushaf that you have, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is ayah number 1 in Fatiha. And in every other surah, it is not considered or counted as an ayah. In fact, it comes in with its own bracket. Except Surah Bara'ah, Surah Tawbah, it does not have the basmala there at all. Those who wrote the Quran, there is called ilm al-rasm. I'm just going through a bit of detail for you to understand what you have to do in your own madhab. Those who wrote the Quran knew that Fatiha is 7 ayat. Then they had ikhtilaf on whether the basmala is part of the Fatiha or not. So those who said that the basmala is part of Fatiha, they made it ayah number 1. Then they said, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim is 1 ayah. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين is the 7th ayah. Okay? The Hanafis, the Hanbalis, the Malikis said that the basmala is not part of the Quran, and then اهدنا الصراط المستقيم is 1 ayah, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم is 1 ayah, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين is the 7th ayah. Okay? That's why you will see whenever I recite the prayer, what do? I always stop at that point. Why? Because I'm Hanafi, right? So I'll follow my own madhab. So for us, we are reciting 7 ayat and we are reciting a complete surah. Therefore, because of this difference of opinion, Imam Shafri says that Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim has to be read aloud for the Imam when he's reading a loud prayer, for the person when he's praying by himself, when he's praying a loud prayer, and for the ma'moom, he will recite the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim silently behind the Imam. Okay? You got this difference of opinion?
Is that a sunnah?
What is a sunnah?
For Shafi to read the basmala aloud?
If the Fatiha has to be read loudly, and the basmala has to be read loudly, right? Now, the coming with the Fatiha itself is a fard. The reading loudly and silently for Imam Shafi is not fard. Okay? But we'll come to that in a minute. In fact, we are doing it next. What is the definition of loud and what is the definition of sirri? So you have to learn some Arabic with me. It's just my habit that I used to, like, when I'm using technical terms, I have to use the Arabic words because to translate it in English and then explain it every single time gets a bit boring. Sirri means the silent prayers. Jahri means the loud prayers. That's easy, inshallah. There are 3 different opinions on how to do sirri recitation. This part is very important to understand. The first opinion, which is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi, is that the person reads loudly enough that he hears himself. Even if one person next to him, who's praying right next to him, hears him as well. Okay? Did you understand that? That means that you have to move your tongue. That sound has to come out loudly enough that you hear yourself. Okay? We'll come to that. That's the opinion. Okay. This is the opinion. And this is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafri. Alright? The second opinion is the Hanbali opinion, which is that the person recites and he makes sound, but he does not need to hear himself. Alright? The third opinion is the opinion of Imam Malik, that he does not need to make sound at all. But it is recommended for him to follow the opinion of one of the other three to get out of the ikhtilaf. Okay? Now, that silent prayer should not be so loud that you are distracting other people. Okay? And what happens is that people do mubalagha of this to come to the requirement. Now, understand that, for example, if the Fatiha is rukun and you just moved your lips and did not make any sound, then you didn't recite it. If you didn't recite it, then the Fatiha was not valid. If you didn't recite the Fatiha, that rak'ah is not valid. Did you understand this? So this mas'ala is actually quite important, that you do have to make a little bit of sound. Don't make it so loud that one saf behind you is hearing you. That becomes distracting. I read the prayer and I have 3 or 4 people behind me and they're reading so loudly, I can't hear my own self. Now, how loud does it have to be? This masjid is, mashallah, very, very quiet. There's no fans, there's no air conditioner. So it's actually extremely quiet in this masjid. Right? It's only when that door is open and you have the kids playing and cars going that you actually hear something. In this kind of situation, if the person was actually to recite the Quran very quietly, he would hear himself. That's how loud you need to recite. You don't have to recite louder because the person next to you is reciting louder as well, right? Just to hear yourself. No, you don't have to do that. The minimum, the actual requirement is what would be required if it was quiet. You got it? All right.
And if someone close the mouth,
yes,
and say, like saying Fatiha within himself, so the salah become batil.
Batil.
So it's a requirement to move your tongue.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the air is coming in your mouth
Mm-hmm.
to your reading,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't hear yourself or others,
Mm-hmm.
is that
Not according to Imam Shafri.
if you move your lips
Yes.
and the air is coming,
Yes.
then that shows I'm reading something.
You are reading something. To be on the safe side and to be the position of Imam Shafi, the person should make a little bit more just so he can hear himself. It doesn't require much, okay? If inshallah after the class you just practice, then you will see that what you are doing every day is correct anyway. The thing that the person should avoid is no sound at all is coming out. That's what should be avoided.
For example, when you're reading the kitab,
Yes.
and you are reading by only seeing it,
Mm-hmm.
without even
Yeah. So
that's not reading.
For the Quran, I don't know the answer for the Shafis. For the Hanafis, if the person wants to recite the Quran, he needs to make some sound. Okay? And our position is the person who's just looking at it and not moving the tongue is that he's not getting the reward of reciting. That's our position. Okay? But I have to go back and look what is the Shafi position.
What about the ma'mun?
Yes, okay. The ma'moom now. Let's do the Fatiha and then we'll come to the ma'moom.
The ma'mun has to open his mouth as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. For the madhab where the ma'moom has to recite something, right? Now, Imam Shafi is the only one that says that the ma'moom has to read the Fatiha, just like the Imam has to read the Fatiha, the ma'moom has to read it himself. So because it is a rukun for the Imam, it is a rukun for the ma'moom. So then the ma'moom also has to make the sound by opening it. And obviously when you're praying by yourself, you have to make the sound by opening it as well. Okay? So you're not reading loudly, but you're reading silently.
So
Yes.
if someone prays behind an imam
Yes.
in the Shafi madhab
Yes.
and he recites without opening the mouth, like
It will not be
he
considered that he has completed the rukun.
has to repeat the salah.
As I said, Imam Shafi's madhab with things you did not know before is,
No, just the
let's say you know the madhab, okay, and you know the ruling, okay, then the person has gone against the madhab and he has to repeat the prayer. Does that make sense? Okay. The Fatiha is a rukun for Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. This is just a revision of what we did in the first class around prayer. And it is a wajib for Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa says that the recitation of one ayah from the Quran is a rukun. Okay? So that if a person did not know the Fatiha, did not know how to recite it, or he forgot to recite it but read one ayah of the Quran, that it completes the rukun but does not complete the wajib. What is the ruling if you don't do a wajib in the Hanafi madhab? Sajda al-Sahw. And if you do not do the Sajda al-Sahw, you have to repeat the prayer.
Rak'ah or the salah?
Well, the Sajda al-Sahw is at the end, right? So now you have finished, then you have to repeat the prayer. It is fard ayn to memorize the Fatiha, meaning that every individual has to memorize it. It is possible that there's a Muslim who becomes a Muslim in Tonga. He has no access to the internet, no access to the Muslims, and he cannot memorize it because there's no one to teach him. It's possible. Then this person is absolved. He does not need to recite the Fatiha. It is a fard kifaya on the community to memorize the Quran. Okay. Something that is not said, but if you go to Abu Adin's country, you will find it commonly. It is fard kifaya to memorize the Quran in all the recitations. There are 10 qurra of the Quran. Each qari has 2 rawis. Each rawi has 4 turuq. So there are 10 qurra, there are 20 reciters, there are 80 turuq. So there is a fard kifaya on the Muslim ummah as a general to keep these qira'at memorized. All right? So it's something that we should not forget as a community. Alhamdulillah, in Sydney you have many people who have memorized this. It's not 1 or 2, but there are many people who have memorized all the qira'at. The Fatiha needs to be read without any mistakes. In Al-Rawd al-Murbi', which is Al-Hanbali madhab, they actually write down and say that the Fatiha has, I think, 11 tashdid. Each one of them has to be read. If the person did not read one shadda of it, then the Fatiha is invalid. If the Fatiha is invalid, what happens? That rak'ah is invalid. An example that they give is Iyaka. It has a tashdid on ya. If the person reads Iyaka, Iyaka, he didn't do the tashdid. He left actually a ya. Instead of reading 2 yas, he read 1 ya. So he has skipped a letter, then he has not completed the Fatiha. Now, what this means is that it is necessary upon the person that when he learns the Fatiha, that he learns to read it correctly as well. I learned tajweed from 3 different teachers, and it was one of my interest areas. And after I learned from the 3rd teacher, I did an online course from 2 separate teachers and did it over multiple months. And then after that I had a further interest, and I was looking to see what is the ijazah around the world that I can obtain and this kind of thing. So I saw a video of a person who already had an ijazah from another sheikh, and he went to go see Sheikh Sanudi, who was at the time 92 years old. And he was so old that the breath would struggle to come out of his mouth, and he was very close to dying. So this Qari went to him and said that I wish to recite Al-Fatiha to you. And he recited it to him, and when he recited it, I thought, mashallah, very good tajweed, his recitation is perfect. Sheikh Sanudi said, no, read this ayah again. He read it again, he said, no, read it again. He said, no, your ayn is not good, fix this. And so for me, what looked perfect was still not perfect according to Shaykh Hassan Nodi. So the point I'm trying to make is encouraging you to learn tajweed, to try and improve your recitation. But the minimum is that the person comes with the... Now, someone reads, instead of reading وَلَا he reads وَلَا right? He has actually come up with another letter instead of the dad. Similar to this is that someone says اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, instead of that he says اهدنا الصراط المستقيم with the sin instead of sad. Why? Because he doesn't know how to recite the sad. Because of these things, he will be the same as the person who hasn't learned the Fatiha completely. His prayer will be valid because of his deficiency. It is allowed to read the other qira'at in the prayer. The fuqaha have written that there are two conditions for reading the qira'at in the prayer. Actually, even Hafs and Asim himself is a qira'ah. Okay? So we don't consider him as the standard by which everything else will be judged. If you go to Morocco or you go to Libya, they don't read Hafs and Asim there as a routine. They read Qarun and Warsh in their normal prayers. So the two conditions are that number one, it must coincide with the Mus'haf of Uthman radiallahu anhu. And the second is that the riwayah must be mutawatirah, meaning that every generation must be mutawatir. How mutawatir is it? Asim alone, the riwayah that we read in the world today is Hafs from Asim. Asim alone taught 70,000 people by himself. And it is perhaps for this reason and this barakah that we recite his recitation, so that he is getting the reward of his great efforts. His son-in-law is Hafs. He was his best student. So when Asim died, Hafs took the chair and he started teaching people, and his recitation spread along with the Abbasid Khalifa. To recap with the Fatiha, Imam Shafri says that it is a rukn for the Imam and the Ma'mum. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal says that the Ma'mum will recite the Fatiha behind the Imam as a sunnah. It is not a shart for him to complete the rukn. It is enough for the Imam to recite. So for example, if the Imam recited and the Ma'mum did not recite and he was Hanbali, the prayer will still be valid. Imam Abu Hanifa says that it is makruh tahrimi to recite behind the Imam. Imam Malik says that there will be no recitation behind the Imam. If he does come with it, then there is no fault in that. All right? Now, the person comes late and the Imam is in ruku'. We said last week he has to do takbirat al-ihram and intend to do the takbirat al-ihram. Okay? If he intends to do the takbirah of going into ruku', then the prayer has not started, the prayer is invalid. Do you understand that? Now understand the second mas'ala. That we said that the Fatiha is a rukn. You did not read the prayer behind the Imam. You come when he is doing ruku'. So what happens to your Fatiha? Then we say that the Fatiha of the Imam was sufficient for you. So you say Allahu Akbar and you go into ruku', and you left the Fatiha. All right? Remember, the first Allahu Akbar is a rukn, and the second Allahu Akbar is a sunnah. If there is a small amount of time that you think the Imam is about to go into ruku', then here the Shafis have some technicalities. All right? And the Shafi madhab is that the person will not do the thana and he will not do the ta'awudh. He will start from Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and read as much of the Fatiha as he can. When the Imam goes into ruku', then he will go into ruku' with him. If he forgot to do it this way, and he said Allahu Akbar, and he said وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. All of this was sunnah. He now has to recite at least this much of the Fatiha as he did of the Sunan. So if the Imam is in ruku', he cannot go into ruku' until he recites that much. Okay? Did you understand this masala? Right? If then he joins the Imam without doing this much of the Fatiha, he does not get that rak'ah. And he has to repeat the rak'ah. Alright? If he did not come with the thana or the ta'awudh and he started with the Fatiha and the Imam goes into ruku', then he, even though he has done one ayah or half an ayah, he will join the Imam in ruku' and that rak'ah will be counted and valid for him. So that is a mas'ala that the Shafi'is emphasize and should be understood and practiced by the Shafi'is. Did you guys know this already, or this was news for you? News for you, okay. So this is just in front of the masail of Al-Fatiha is something that should be understood.
Joins in the ruku'.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is
Needed Fatiha.
No. So the Imam is in ruku'. You don't need to do Fatiha. You did Allahu Akbar and you go into ruku'. But if you did a mistake and you said Allahu Akbar and you said, for example, wajjahtu wajhi, right? Now you have to come with as many words of the Fatiha, right? So you will say,
So
you will have to, the minimum you will have to say is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, because you said wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi, for example, you said 3 words, so now you will have to do 3-4 words of Fatiha before you can go into ruku'.
What's the position of Imam Abu Hanifa?
Imam Abu Hanifa, simple, straightforward. You say Allahu Akbar and you go Allahu Akbar and join the Imam.
So that's accepted.
You weren't here last week. We also said that Imam Abu Hanifa says that if a person says Allahu Akbar, it will still be valid for him. But everyone says you need to have the intention that that takbirah is takbirah al-ihram. It's not the takbirah of going into the ruku'.
He has to say twice, yeah?
The first one he has to say. The second one he doesn't have to say. Okay? Because the second one is sunnah. Yes.
All these differences between the Imam,
Yes.
do they have, when they say that's makruh or that's not this,
Yes.
do they have any,
Dalail? Okay, I'll give you one example. Imam Abu Hanifa's position is that it is makruh tahrimi to recite behind the Imam. And on the opposite side, Imam Shafri says he has to recite it. Two completely opposite. Why is this? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, La salata, la salata, what is the word? No. There is no prayer without the Fatiha. Illa bi Fatihatil Kitab. La salata illa bi Fatihatil Kitab. It is the position of 80 of the great Sahaba that there is no recitation behind the Imam, including people like Abdullah ibn Abbas, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and many of the great Sahaba who prayed behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Almost all the Sahaba who were in Kufa that came there and taught Kufa, they all had the same position. Now, Imam Shafi, his madhab is that if I find an authentic hadith, that is my madhab. Okay? Imam Abu Hanifa's madhab, now you have to always understand that when there are two different evidences, that the ulama base their opinion on their usul. Everyone has the same dalail. No one is missing dalail. All right? We can't say the Hanafis did not know this hadith. I heard this from someone. I said, but I'm sorry, but you haven't read ABC. If you are saying this, you don't know ABC in the deen, so shut your mouth. You don't know anything. You shouldn't be in this debate. You first become a alim and then come to the debate. They all had the same dalail. There's no difference of opinion. The only difference is how they look at the dalail. Imam Abu Hanifa's method, Imam Malik's method is they don't just look at the hadith, but they look at what was practically done by the Sahaba. Right? Because there are things in the hadith that even the Rawi did not practice on. Right? And he's passing it on. So they are, this is one of the reasons for why I became Hanafi, for why I chose the Hanafi position, was the strength of the evidence in this matter. However, I'm not saying that the Shafi position is weak in any way. But so the amal of the Sahaba was that they did not recite behind the Imam, from what the Hanafis saw. And that's why. That's what their position is.
Do you have to follow one madhab? How this?
Okay, let me give you an example of why you have to follow a madhab and why I am teaching the class in this method. To prepare for these classes, I have to read all the four madhahib. It's quadruple the work for me. And when I was preparing, sometimes in the car, I just put on a video and I listen to a sheikh. So today I was listening to Sheikh Faraz Rabbani, who was one of my favorite teachers. And he was teaching Kanz al-Daqaiq. And he goes into the technicalities of Imam al-Qarqi said this, and Imam al-Hindawi said this. And I'm like, wow, I'm really enjoying this. I wish I could just teach Hanafi madhab and just do that. You can go into and have some fun with it, you know. However, the reality is that we have 4 different madhahib praying in this masjid alone. Then why do we have to follow one madhab? Okay, the reason you have to follow a madhab, and I've answered this before, but because you haven't been before, I will answer it, is that the fuqaha came to conclusions based on usul, all right? Based on principles. Those same set of principles they applied everywhere. Imam Abu Hanifa, based on those principles, says that a woman does not need her wali to do a nikah, okay? Based on his principles. Imam Shafri says you cannot do the nikah without a wali. So now a person has got married according to the Hanafi madhab. When he sleeps with his wife, it is rewarded for him. If he was Shafi, he would be doing zina. Do you understand this masala? Now. Then now he touched his wife's hand, and he is Hanafi, his wudu did not break. For Imam Shafi, his wudu break. Then he came to the masjid, right? He's praying behind the Imam, and Imam Abu Hanifa says what? It is makruh tahrimi to recite the Quran. His nikah was based on Imam Abu Hanifa, and his wudu is based on Imam Abu Hanifa. But now you're going to say that the prayer will be according to Imam Shafi. Can you see the problem? The usul that applied to your nikah and your business transactions and your zakat and your hajj, they should be applied across the board. That's very simplistically, right? In many masail, the ulama are at extreme ends. And in their own positions, they say the other party is incorrect. But they also, from a technical perspective, they say that we are on the correct and there's a possibility of being wrong, and they are wrong and they have the possibility of being correct. But what they're actually all saying is that all 4 madhahib are correct, but the person should be following one madhab.
If he doesn't follow and intends to chop and change,
if he intends to chop and change,
penalty in terms of whether you have made a minha for yourself or it's a sin for yourself.
you have made your own life difficult, to be very honest. Okay, because let's say a person come and ask me a question yesterday. I prayed behind the Imam and I missed a rak'ah, and when I get up to make my rak'ah, how will I make it up? Will I read a surah? Will I not read a surah? What will I do? Is it my last rak'ah? Is it my first rak'ah? Do I do the tawawuth? A lot of masail, right? Now, so if you say, for example, that I will follow Imam Shafri to do the thana and ta'awuth and basmala loudly, and then I will follow Imam Abu Hanifa and I will do this with the surah, you are mixing up the prayer without any knowledge of what you are doing. There are 4 categories of people. A person who doesn't have knowledge and he will follow one madhab. Okay? A person who becomes a alim and he knows the rulings with regards to one mas'ala. Okay? Then he is allowed to follow any of the madhahib in that one mas'ala. And the 3rd person who has enough knowledge that he knows his position in many masail, he can choose in those masail. And the 4th is a mujtahid. He is not allowed to follow anyone. Okay? Now, did I put any category between the jahil and the alim? Answer was no. Till you become a alim, you have to follow someone. The greatest proof for this is where you say, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, sirat al-ladhina. Okay? Who is al-ladhina? Which sirat are you going to follow? The straight, the path of the Prophet ﷺ. How do we know what is the path of the Prophet ﷺ? Except through the ulama. No other way. That's the strongest proof. Through the last 1300 centuries, all of the ummah has always followed a mujtahid imam. It is in the last 100 years with the advent of the Salafi movement where they have started to say that you don't need to follow anyone. When you go to their ulama, okay, I'm not talking about the Jahil Salafi, I'm talking about the Alim Salafi. He himself says you need to follow one path. You cannot today say that I'm going to do this in my prayer and tomorrow I will do this in my prayer. Or today you'll say, okay, I touched my wife by accident, for today I'm becoming Hanafi. And then tomorrow when something is easier for you in the Shafi madhab, you say, today I'm not Hanafi, today I am Shafi. This is, you go to Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, you go to any other great scholar of their movement, they will also, this is completely wrong. So it is an unfortunate thing that we have many, many Jahil Salafis who have made this thing common, that you can just do whatever you like. Can someone shut that down? Can someone close that? Yeah.
Shahin,